Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Money Talk with Attorney Coral. I am Attorney Coral Pleas, the host of this show, and thank you so much each and every week for having me here at WNOV 860 AM and 106.5 FM. Did I get that right, guys? Okay. I'm trying to read from the sign, but I am very nearsighted and I'm sitting here without my glasses. So I'm looking across the room. So I just wanted to make sure I got the digits okay. So yeah, thank you so much for having us. I always like to talk about the fact that this show is sponsored by Columbia Savings and Loan Association. If it weren't for Columbia Savings and Loans, I wouldn't be here every week. So I'm glad to be able to be here. I'm glad that the bank supports and sponsors this show each and every week because the real premise of this show is to bring information to the community. Everyone knows that. I say it often enough that yes, I am an attorney, but I'm not here to give legal advice. I'm here to provide information. And so it's educational things that we try to talk about each and every week just for the benefit of the community. And as always, we certainly encourage the callers to call in to the show. The number here is 414 444 5250. That is 414 444 5250 and 5253. Yep, I got it right. Thanks, Jermaine. Jermaine coaches me a little bit every week so that I don't try to say the same numbers over and over. We want to understand people to know that there's different lines to call in on, and I always enjoy the callers that call into the show and add to the discussions that we have each and every week. Um, Last week was just fabulous, and the audience might recall that I had two different shows where we talked about Columbia Savings and Loan Association recently, and basically I called it Standing on Columbia Business. We want to reintroduce Columbia Savings and Loans to this community. Columbia Savings and Loan Association has been in existence for, counting this year, 101 years. We celebrated the centennial last September. So technically by September of this year, the show will have been, or excuse me, the bank will have been in existence for 101 years right here in our community. And I know I'm going to call you Superman, but I see like I want I want to bring you in on that. Yeah, put your glasses on so you can hear me, right? But yeah, I know you were saying last week that wow, I didn't realize the bank was still there. I thought the bank was closed.
Yeah,
Is that right?
yeah, I did, because because I didn't see too much action. So the action that I did see, I thought maybe it was cleaning a bit or getting ready for somebody else to come in.
Right.
But 100 year, and that's a black owned bank
Absolutely.
for that many years. Man.
Yes. And we are the only one left in the state of Wisconsin. I don't know if I had a chance to tell you that last week.
Wow, that's something. I see. I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So I think sometimes what might confuse people a little bit, there is an old building that we were in that is on, it's on the same parcel of land where we currently are, and there is still signage on that building that says Columbia Savings and Loan Association. Okay. And it's very clear from looking at that building that it's been vacated, right?
Yeah,
and so it's sitting there and it's vacant.
Okay.
And if you're driving, if you know Milwaukee, I know people are listening are generally familiar with the Milwaukee area, but if you are traveling like in a northwest direction on Fond du Lac Avenue, Fond du Lac runs kind of diagonally. But when you get right there to 20th Street, the old building is actually to your right, and it would be the first building that you see. So if you don't know that the new building,
paid attention to it so many years,
exactly,
building.
So I think that's part of what adds a little bit to the confusion. In fact, I remember one morning I had someone who was dropping me off at work because I was having some car issues, and she thought that the old building, was where I was going. And I said, no, you can see that building is, kind of closed down and locked down. But if you don't know, you don't know.
You don't know.
So, that was just the thought process that, she had, for that. Okay. But now, do you think you have a good idea where we are?
Oh, yeah, I got a good idea.
Okay, because I know last week we talked and you said you're going to come and see us.
Yeah, I'm still coming. Okay. I got a family reunion going on right now.
So, all right, so I will hold you to it, though.
Oh, I'm coming.
Yeah, all right, I will hold you to it. So thank you so much. So last week, I was reintroducing Latoya Sykes, who had been on maybe 2 weeks prior, but I was delighted last week to introduce her as the branch manager.
That's,
So that's a promotion for her, um, that we are just so confident in her abilities to lead the team, and delighted to have her on board in that
okay, that's
regard.
good.
So yeah, and the main thing, Ernie and I, when I say Ernie, I'm talking about Ernest Jones, who is the president and CEO
Yeah.
and the board chair for Columbia Savings and Loan Association. And Ernie's been on the board for about 6 years now, but he's been the president of the bank for, I want to say it's going on 3 years. So it is relatively new leadership, because the former leadership, I think, was at the helm of the ship for more than 30 years.
Mm.
So yeah, so for Ernie to have been on board for a little over, or just about 3 years now as the president of the bank, and that role was kind of defaulted to him when the other president, who was brought in to replace the longstanding former president, left after a short period of time. So this wasn't something he was campaigning for. It just kind of,
Fell in his lap.
fell into his lap,
Yeah.
his reluctant lap, because again, he was content to work behind the scenes, as a director on the board and as the chair of the board, because the board is really crucial to the operations of this institution. But he was happy to be behind the scenes in that capacity. But as it turned out, there was the need to name a new president, and I frankly thank God that Ernie was named in that capacity.
Yeah.
And he might not feel that way, but the rest of us do, because he's a fantastic leader, and I couldn't say enough good things about him if I had all day. But it was his decision, in consultation with me, to name Latoya Sykes as the branch manager, and
That's
she is
good.
doing a fantastic job in that capacity. So
Oh,
just
that's
so
real
glad.
good.
Yeah, and you had the chance to meet her last week
Yes,
too.
yes, yes. Very, very, very nice woman.
Yeah. So we want the community to know who we are. We want the community to know who is in charge of this bank. We want the community to call up or schedule an appointment, come in and meet us and see who we are, and
Yes,
try us out. We want people to know.
yes. To me, black-owned businesses is something that I know my family personally, we talk about it all the time. And especially supporting a black business like a bank should be something you know everybody should think about and quit the negativity or sometimes you hear niggas, I ain't gonna trust them, because you know
Right.
because of that negativity. But I think that I'm definitely coming to see because you're making it more interesting for
Yeah.
me.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah,
yeah, come on in, and I'm glad that we're making it more interesting. And part of that, as I said before, is just knowing who the players are. Knowing who the people are that are on board. So I mentioned Ernest Jones as the president and CEO. I would like to also once again acknowledge our directors, Dr. Mose Fuller, who has come many times to fill in for me on the Money Talk show for the times that I'm not available. Every once in a while, I'll have a conflict because I am a practicing attorney still. So I
okay,
go to court. In fact, I'm in court this afternoon.
okay,
So fortunately today, I was able to make certain that the scheduling didn't conflict, with
right.
my responsibilities here to bring the show live every week. And when I have the opportunity to have some input into the court dates that are assigned, I schedule them around, my other commitments. But every once in a while, depending upon the status of a case, you get an order from a judge saying this is the date, this is the time, and you got to show up. So to the extent that I can control that, I do. But if I'm not able to, Dr. Fuller has been gracious to stand in for me as a host of the show and bring to light, many good issues that I think the community has been interested in, because he too likes to focus the conversations that he has on the necessity for having a black bank.
Okay.
We want to keep this going into the next century. So, it's important to have people understand, why is this even necessary? And I think that sometimes people just think, well, we are able to go to majority banks now, we as Black people, because if you may know or recall, the reason that Columbia started is because Black people in Milwaukee were not allowed to get mortgages from majority owned banks. So white banks weren't giving mortgages to
Right.
Black people,
Right.
even if they qualified, even if they had the money, even if they had the credit, they were just being denied. So the whole point of starting Columbia was so that we'd have somewhere to go to be able to get, mortgages and have mortgages approved. So that's what, really started it. So some people might think in this day and age, well, it's not like that anymore. You're Black, you can go to a bank and get a loan. But we certainly have the opportunity to serve our community and do loans in our community, because home ownership is so important, just in terms of anchoring the community. So we definitely want to be mindful of all of that. And in addition, again, I'm just quickly thanking the people that are involved with this bank. So I would be remiss if I don't mention Steve Moore, who's another director who's been on the board for, I want to say, about 3 years now. And Steve has a banking and a financial background and a technical background. So he is just key to a lot of what we do on a day to day basis. And, we're just very fortunate to have the team of people in charge that we have. In addition to, this will be the end of my shout outs, because I want to introduce my guest, who's here with us today. And I'm so glad to see her. I haven't seen her in a while. You're looking great. And I'm going to introduce you properly in just a moment. But I do want to just acknowledge the rest of the team that's back at the branch right now working hard. We have Yumika Miller, who is working hard in the teller capacity, Jamila Jones in that same capacity. Later this afternoon, Olivia Clark will be joining, because Olivia has been with the bank for more than a year now in the teller capacity. But Olivia is a seasonal worker because she is a full time college student. So we're fortunate to have her for this summer. She'll be going back to school in just a few more weeks. We have Miles Ward, also a full time college student, who will be going back to school in just a few more weeks. And of course, Mr. Golbaz Gill, whom you've all had a chance to meet numerous times that I've had him on the show talking about different loan related matters. But that's what he does. And then, of course, there's me. So, and you all know who I am. I am the general counsel for Columbia Savings and Loan Association, and just delighted to be here every week to talk to you about different things that the bank is doing, or different topics that are of interest to the community. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce my guest for today, Dr. LACI Robbins, who is with us in the studio this morning. Dr. LACI, say hello to the people.
Hello, everybody. I am so excited to be back again.
And we're glad to have you back. So
Thank
thank you so much for
you.
coming back. I know how
Absolutely.
busy you are.
Oh my gosh.
And I know how hard that is. Even this morning, I know that you were on calls that were running over, and
So
you're
sorry.
juggling so much. No, please don't apologize. I'm very grateful for your time and the fact that
Mhm.
you made it here with all that you have to do. So thank you for
No.
coming.
Listen, I am so excited to be back again to have this conversation with you, with the WNOV audience, everyone who might be tuning in either online or listening or catch the replay or whatever. I'm excited to be. I've had this on my calendar for like over a month because
Yes.
I wanted to ensure that I made it back. And little did I know, things happen, but I was determined to be here. So please
Right.
pardon me for being tardy to the party.
No, no. Listen, we're just glad to have you. And yeah, and I know before when you came, I was having a series on entrepreneurs and leaders. So it's incomplete without someone like you.
Oh,
And
you're
I
too kind.
specifically like having you because I know that you in some of your trainings, and we'll talk a little bit about who you are and what you do, but how you focus on women leaders. And so of
Yes.
course that's something that's near and dear to my heart,
Absolutely.
right? So
Absolutely.
Dr. Lacey is an award-winning leader with a master's degree and a doctorate degree in leadership.
Yes.
Dr. Lacey is skilled in training organizational management on the essentials of talent retention and organizational culture. That is so important. It is.
Yeah.
So to break it down, keeping good people and making sure you got a good work environment.
Absolutely. And keeping the right people as well. And then those who may not be a good match, releasing them back into the workforce.
Well, there you go. I love how you say it. Release them back into the workforce. I
Absolutely.
love how she said that. So, you're a businesswoman, you are an entrepreneur, you are a motivational speaker, you are a consultant, you are a mother, and you are a pastor's wife.
Yes.
How in the world? I mean, tell the audience a little bit. I can sum it up with my bullet points, but please let them know who you are and what you do.
Well, first and foremost, I think you ended with the beginning, right?
Okay.
So being I wore it today. God is my CEO.
Hmm.
I am a child of the king. I
Love
tell
it.
everybody, God don't play about me. I am his princess.
Ah,
And I am so grateful that he has gifted me with the opportunity because I don't take it lightly. There are a lot of people when it comes to ministry, they may see themselves as called to the homeless or called to, those who are coming from reentry, they've the incarcerated. Me, my calling is to the marketplace. My calling is to the business person. The Bible tells us that in all you're getting, get understanding. It also
mm,
goes on to tell us that money is the answer to all things. And so, how are we to do ministry if we don't have money to do so?
right.
And
Right.
that's how I look at it. And so literally, anytime that we have, and when I say we, I'm a business partner with my husband, Bishop Aaron Robbins. Shout out to Bishop Aaron Robbins and Compel Family Life Center. And so we're business partners and we're life partners. And so when we are considering where do we want to take our talents next, we always have that in the forefront of our mind that ministry has to be the lead.
Right, right. No, I think that's really something because, a lot of times people will say, oh, no, if they're involved in the church, they shouldn't care about money. They shouldn't be about money. But no, you just based what you said on scripture.
Absolutely. It's the word. It's the
Right.
word. And unfortunately, a lot of times people say, well, money is the root of all evil. But the Bible says, for the love of money is the root of all evil.
That's
And
right.
the Bible goes on and tells us that he's giving us the ability to get wealth. So if that's what my father has called for me, who am I to disagree with him? Who am I to disagree with that?
Right, right. No, we can't
So
disagree with
I
that.
can't agree with the word.
Oh, we're starting off on fire. Well, I know that we're coming to the point where we have to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk more about exactly what you just brought up. I love it. I think that's a point to underscore. So, thanks everyone for listening. This is Money Talks with Attorney Coral. The guest this morning is Dr. Lacey Robbins, and we will be back with more from Dr. Robbins after the break. This is Money Talks with Attorney Coral. I am Attorney Coral Pleas, and I have with me in the studio this morning Dr. LACI Robbins. Hello,
Yay.
Dr. LACI.
Hello.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Yes, I'm excited to be back.
Yeah, your energy is contagious. Can I just tell you that?
I'm sure it's hard to believe I was a cheerleader from like fourth
Oh,
grade through
ooh,
college.
who wouldn't have thought? See, that's
I kind
obvious.
of figured that.
Yeah. You can tell the way you came bouncing in
Yeah.
here with all that.
It's hard
all
to
that
believe for
zest.
people, right?
Yes. No, that's good.
I know
That's
you the
good.
chippy one, wasn't
I was. And then sometimes it gets on people's nerves because they're like,
Mhm.
how are you this happy? You know? But
you?
Well, the people that have a problem with people who are happy, I mean, that says something.
that says something about them, right?
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
We release them back into the
We
workplace.
release them back.
Or however you
back
said
and
it
back.
before.
In this case, we release you back to the world.
There you go.
Find
We
your life.
release you back to the world if that's your mindset.
Mhm.
Yeah, so you were saying before we went to break, and we were just talking about money a little bit, and I did want to just circle back and just flush that out a little bit more, because
Yeah.
I do think it's important that people understand that money isn't the bad thing. We need it.
We need it.
You
Mhm.
cannot do ministry if you're broke.
That's 100% the truth.
Yeah, and you cannot operate any for-profit business if you don't have money.
No, that's called a hobby.
Well, see,
That's called a hobby.
that's a whole
Yes.
different thing.
It's a whole nother thing. And there's nothing wrong with hobbies. And I do believe, like, when you're trying to investigate, is this the right business for me or for my family or legacy or whatever you're trying to create? It is important to explore it at first. But then you also have to think about something called sunk cost bias, which essentially says you spent so much time on a certain task or activity, sunk cost bias, that you think, oh, well, I've given so much time to this, I can't possibly walk away from it. However, if you are astute, you know that if I've spent this much time and I haven't seen yet a return on the investment, the return could be financially, the return can be mentally, the return could also be even to the fact of the experience itself. Are you learning? So, from a knowledge standpoint, then you have to be able to cut it off. You have to
Right.
be able to cut it off. And sometimes we get caught up in ego. Well, I don't want to cut it off, or what are they going to think or say? I say oftentimes what someone else thinks of me is none of my business.
There you go. I like that
It's none of my
expression.
business.
Yep.
And
And,
so
you're right.
I just
You're
have to
right.
keep my focus moving
Mhm.
forward.
But so here's what I want. I want the audience to know who you are. And I know we talked about your background last time, but that was last summer.
I can't believe that was already last
Yeah, I think
summer.
it was, wasn't it
Wow, I
though?
think
I'm
so,
pretty sure it
yeah.
was, like, the last time you were here. So
Mm.
let's talk a little bit. I know that you come from a background of teachers and servicemen, but
Mhm.
will you please tell the audience a little bit about who you are, where you're born, the family of preachers too. Let me
Yes.
not leave that
Yeah,
out.
don't leave that out.
Yeah, your
Oh.
education and
Mhm.
everything, so people know who you are. And so, because when you speak, it's obvious that you are speaking with an expertise. So I
Oh,
just want
thank
people to
you.
know the background of that. So go ahead, Dr.
Sure.
LACI.
So I'm actually born and raised in Tucson, Arizona, a military baby. My father was a captain in the Air Force, but my mom was from Milwaukee. And so, unfortunately, through transitions, we ended up moving to Milwaukee when I was 9 years old. So I'm a product of MPS, proud Rufus King graduate, just
Yeah, I
down the
was gonna
street
say,
here.
I don't see that as a bad thing that you came to
Yeah.
Milwaukee. I'm glad you did.
Absolutely proud Rufus King graduate. So go Generals, any Generals on the line. And then I knew, from watching The Cosby Show, watching A Different World, I wanted to go to an HBCU. There was no doubt in my mind. So, following family legacy, I went to Fisk University, which is located in Nashville. So, I know there may be some Fiskites listening. And I actually I went as a pre med major. And that first couple, like, chemistry, biology class, I said, no, Jesus, this is not for me. And I hurried up and changed my major to English. And I
Okay.
actually thought I was going to be an attorney because I love to talk, love to debate, love to learn, love to write. And I
Mhm.
did a law internship for 2 summers and hated it.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
said, this is not for me.
Yeah.
Right. And
Mhm.
I was in the office the whole time rather than being out amongst the people. And I think that probably played a part. But this is why I think it's so important for young people to have exposure to various experiences.
Right.
Because what if I had went all the way through and now I'm in a career that I hate rather than
Yeah.
something I love?
That would have been a sunk cost bias,
A
right?
sunk cost bias, because I would have spent all this time
All this time was something that you ain't got love for.
for something I don't have. Exactly. You said it, sir.
Right.
And so I stayed in Nashville. got my master's degree in leadership. Also obtained the doctorate in leadership with an emphasis in neuroscience. So basically, my focus was around metacognitive theory, which is in leadership. So, how do leaders think and operate? So, metacognitive theory essentially says thinking about thinking, and then dealing with leadership. How does it show up in how they're day to day and engage with one another? So through that course, I also worked in the school system. I worked in a career for about 12, 13 years. And then I had a student in the suburbs try to stab me with a hunting knife. And that was the beginning of the end for me as far as like forward facing education.
I would imagine.
So quit my job, moved to Florence, Italy, lived there for about a year, worked for an English speaking newspaper, studied art, reconnected with myself. And then my family said, you know, you're just so far. Would you just consider coming back home?
No, okay, but hold on. Who quits their job and just said, "Oh, what are you going to do next? I think I'll move to Florence, Italy."
Yeah.
How did that come about, Doc?
So literally, I'm sitting there in church and I'm just like, I cannot continue to do this work. And that for about a year, I was just waiting on this release to happen.
Mhm.
And so finally, I felt that release to come, right? And I was at work and I had submitted my resignation, and people were like, well, what are you doing next? And I was just in jest, like, oh, I don't know. I may just move to Italy. You know, I may move to Florence. And I didn't know. And I just was kind of throwing it out there.
Right.
And I went in, I was talking to one of my colleagues, and I said my same little banter to her. And she said, well, you know, my sister did that. She quit her job. She sold everything. She moved to Mexico. She's teaching English there. She did that exact thing. And it just kind of like clicked. And I left out of there and I went to the librarian of the school and I said, Lori, I'm moving to Europe. I need you to help me figure out how. How do I get a visa? What's the next step? And I've always been of this mindset. What would I attempt to do if I knew I could not fail? And that's how I operate. So I'm always operating from like this higher level, right? And this is where like the science meets faith, and the two come together. So the Bible tells us that we are created in his image. And so and it also says his thoughts are above my thoughts. So if I'm thinking, well, what could happen if I moved to Italy? He's already like, girl, you're already there. And I already have a job lined up for you. And it's all going to work out for your good. And so I just start to operate in a place as though it's already happened. And then it does happen. And so then I am there and I'm working and I'm learning and I'm meeting new people. I'm going to activities where there's people from Japan, from Germany, from Italy, from America. And the only common language is Italian. And so, ended up coming home and ended up coming all the way back home to Milwaukee, where I never thought I would live again.
Yeah. After about a year or so.
After about a year.
Yeah.
Yep. I came on back and ended up meeting my husband. Shout out to Bishop McClellan and Lady McClellan of Holy Cathedral Church of God in Christ, because they're the ones that introduced us. Because I was on my way to Texas.
Oh.
I was getting ready to move to San Antonio and take a job there working for an art museum.
Well, look at God. And look at his timing.
What
Right?
you saying?
When you came back.
When I came back.
Just in time.
And this is where the Bible tells us he who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor with the Lord.
With the Lord, yeah.
I was not looking to connect with my husband. I had him in the friend zone. You know, when he said he first saw me, he actually thought I was married just because how I carried myself. That's a tip for some woman listening. This how I carried myself. He already thought I was married, right? Because he finds a wife. He doesn't find a girlfriend. He doesn't find a potential. He finds a wife. And we just became fast friends. And I remember telling him, like, yeah, I'm getting moved to Texas. And he's like, I don't think that's what God has for you. And I was like, I think you need to mind your business, because, I hear God too. I'm moving to Texas. And do you not know the job fell out? And working for nonprofits, job fell out, the bottom fell out. And I was like, you don't pray my job away. And I ended up staying. And yada, 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 here we are.
All right. You said so much. You just said so much. It just in that segment, and giving me an idea for yet another show. Or I'm sure this is something that you've done with your practices with Robin's Nest and all of that. But with what you said about a hint to the young women, how you carry yourself.
Yes.
He thought you were already a wife. Well, you were. You just weren't yet his.
There it
is.
Yes.
But some of the way the young girls present themselves,
Mhm.
these days, and that's not what the stand-up good guys are looking
Nope.
Mm-mm.
for. And we got
Mm-mm.
a gentleman chiming in here right in the
No, no, no,
background.
no,
You're
no.
agreeing with what we're
Yeah, I'm
saying.
agreeing. I'm agreeing.
Yes,
I
yes.
Mm.
So
mean,
that
it's. I would love to see a lot of women, young women, just dress normal, bitch. It's just regular. Just you ain't got to look all.
Right.
You know, I'm trying to put in a certain way. I don't want to, cuss, but put
Oh,
in.
please don't
yeah, no, I
cuss.
don't think
Please don't
we
cuss.
can. I
Right,
don't think we
right. But
we're
you know what
live.
I'm trying to say. You know what I'm trying to say. Yeah, yeah,
Well,
Yeah,
conservative. You can be conservative and cute,
right.
right?
There you
Yeah,
go.
you can
And
be
classy.
sophisticated and sexy and
Right.
classy and all of those things. My mother used to always tell me, "We not selling nothing up in here," and so the cover. But make sure the bees are covered.
There you go.
Simple.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly.
Simple.
Now I never heard it put that way, but I know exactly what she meant just to
Exactly.
hear you say it. No,
Hmm.
absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. So, okay, so you thought you were going to Texas, but God intervened,
God had a
right?
plan.
Yeah, and had a plan for you. So
Yes, ma'am.
now tell us about the different businesses and so forth that you are involved in. You and your husband and all of that.
Yeah, so the one that we began together is started in 2017. That is Robbins Nest Consulting. It's a learning and leadership development firm located here in Milwaukee in Wauwatosa, and we specialize in mid-sized businesses, specifically banking and finance industry. We do sometimes find other government, other industries, but our sweet spot is banking and finance, and working with individuals in those arenas, and also working with women in male dominated industries. And
Okay.
so our goal is really to be able to support that leader through education, through empowerment, through retreats, so that they can create culture maps, culture plans, and climate plans that help them to retain the top talent. So, how can you identify, like, these are your flyers, right? These are your stones, and these are the ones who are going to like skyrocket. And so, that the second business that we started, we actually started it in 2020 in the middle of a pandemic. Jesus.
Yeah, we sure
Which,
were.
oh
We
my gosh. And we had started having conversations about this business. This is
mhm,
A&A,
mhm.
Services and Transportation. It's our trucking business. And we had started having conversations about that business a year before we even began it. And so when the pandemic hit, like most people, we had more time on our hands. So why don't we go ahead and flush this out and launch it and get it going? So we have had numerous iterations, even since when I was here last to being here today. We now are only running semis. We at one point had over 23 trucks in our fleet, everything from sprinter vans to semis. We are always hiring Class A CDL drivers. So if you are interested in looking for work, definitely feel free to reach out. Um,
Yeah, but no, Dr. Lacey, I think that's important. If you don't mind, to give your contact information
yes,
because this show is about money, and you just
absolutely.
announced job opportunities. Go ahead and
Absolutely.
tell people how to reach you.
Yeah, so you can reach out to me, text or call 414 7620. So that's for 414 That's anyone who has a Class A CDL driving license with at least 1 year verifiable driving experience. If you have doubles, tankers, or hazmat endorsement, that's even better. But you have to at least have 1 year verified. Now, listen, if you don't have 1 year verifiable driving experience, please don't call or text me because I cannot help you. And also, we are looking for individuals who are doubles endorsed.
All right, that sounds good. So
Yes.
hopefully, maybe if there's someone who's out there that looking for such a position, maybe this is
Yes.
another connection that will
That would
be
be
made.
awesome. That would be awesome.
Yeah. So you started a trucking company at the very beginning of the pandemic. So
Hmm.
because you said 2020, that's when the whole thing really
It
started.
just,
So a
yeah.
lot of people were not looking to start businesses in that climate. So that had to
No.
be a faith move.
It was definitely a faith move, one that was very lucrative for us. And again, we had, this is the difference, I think, for some people. We had already started having conversations, exploring what options could be, what it could potentially look like, the fall before. And so in 2019, those conversations had started. Even when it came to Robin's Nest Consulting, it was my husband who saw the gift, not myself, because I was traveling all over the country. I was doing trainings. I was, selected, handpicked by the governor At that time, it was Governor Tony Evers. I was representing the state of Wisconsin at various tables, and he kept on saying, like, "Bae, you need to just do this for yourself." And I'm thinking he's just, he's your husband. He being nice, and but in the mouth of many witnesses. So there were other individuals who started like shining the light. We oftentimes don't see the greatness in ourselves. We're just doing the
Right.
work,
Right.
and so it gave me pause, and I thought, okay, well, what if? And we started exploring, and the same thing happened with the trucking. Well, what if? And we
Mhm.
started exploring. And so, the trucking business has had its own experiences and ebbs and flows.
Sure.
And I think this is where, again, you have to be honest with yourself. All right, what do we need to do to right size? What do we need to do to, make sure that these businesses are operating at a high level where we want them to be? And so, like,
Mhm.
even the consulting business, it's had numerous iterations and numerous
Mhm.
focus. And now we're at a place where it's like, yep, this is who we are. This is what we do. This is below our floor. So if that's something that is not in alignment, let's not take that client on. Same with the trucking as well. We just run semis, no more box trucks, no more semi passenger buses, no,
Mhm.
no more last mile delivery, just
Mhm.
semis. And we at one point were doing a little bit regional over the road, and now we just basically run just really between Wisconsin and Illinois, and that's it.
Okay, okay.
Hmm.
But I think you make a good point, though, that you are maybe narrow but deep,
Narrow but deep.
right? Rather than
Yes.
spread wide and then, not
Yes.
as deep. So
Absolutely.
sometimes, well, not sometimes, you really learn that by trying.
Right, absolutely. And you get the opportunity to bump your head a little bit, have those experiences so that well, this is where I want to go deep. And that's made all the difference for us as well. So we say in the Robin's Nest, roots or wings. And so what are we looking to be able to generate more of? And I think for us personally, we want to be known for, we want to be the expert of, and when it comes to mid-sized businesses working with financial institutions and banks,
Mhm.
yep, you need support there. This is who you need to call.
Okay. Is that because you find in those types of organizations, banks, and you mentioned banking and finance, do you find that women are more rare in leadership roles in that industry? Is that why you target? Is that why you make that focus?
Absolutely. So, what we have found, there are certain industries in which women leaders typically are not found in director and CXO, so C suite individuals. And we want to be able to assist organizations, one, in showing a mirror and really being able to ask, well, why is that? Why is there's this constant turnover? There are some concepts that are referred to, for instance, as the glass ceiling, and a lot of people are familiar with that term, right? But
Right.
there's also a term called the glass cliff. And the glass
Mm,
cliff essentially says, and you typically see this, a woman of color, typically a black woman, is put into place or put into position where the organization is almost at a place of no return, where it's on the brink of failure or closure. And so then the boards or individuals are able to say, well, we gave her a chance. We put a person of color in, they just couldn't do the job. But they don't want to talk about how, the budget was off and there was a huge deficit when they took over and those sort of things. And,
right.
they were able to most times right the ship, but under what scrutiny and stress. And typically, what also tends to happen once they do right the ship, they move them out and they move a male counterpart back in.
Oh, wow.
And so you can see that cycle repeated over and over again.
Hmm.
And so, then there's also the glass labyrinth. And the glass labyrinth essentially says, and you typically see this happening to women in middle management, women who, I just had a conversation with someone from the medical industry. And, well, if you do this, this is going to give you the promotion. Oh, wait, you didn't get you know what? Because you should have done this instead. So they're giving you all these twists and turns, and you essentially are in a labyrinth, in a maze, and you
Hmm.
keep doing what they're telling you to do to get that next level or get that promotion, and the promotion never comes.
Right.
And so when we are seeing that in companies, a lot of times we are going in initially, we offer like an assessment that takes place.
Hmm.
There may be a constant or chronic change that's happened. And so we're trying to assist them as to figure out, well, why is that taking place? Why are you having so much change? Why is it that you're not able to retain individuals of color or women in your industry and or in your company? And like, here are the red flags that keep coming up. right? Is it your
Mhm.
onboarding process? Is it inclusivity that is the challenge, right? So why would I want to work someplace that I don't feel like I belong?
Right.
And so, if
Right.
that is in fact the case, what can you do to start to change that? It has to go beyond it's pizza Fridays and Monday donuts in the break room.
Mhm. Right, right. Wow, I'll bet that's interesting. So, once you identify, a company that you would like to go and offer your services to, how like are well, they must be receptive to it because you've been successful. But in my mind, I'm picturing, well, people who are operating a certain way tend to want to continue with what they're
Hmm.
doing. But you're probably able to say to them, listen, if you really want to be successful, if you really want to be profitable, you need to start to address some of these things. Am I right?
Absolutely. So one of the key things that we are always showing them is the need for to review the data. What is the data telling you? And so we have to do our research initially as the offerer, as the consulting company coming in, because we also don't want this to be like, let's hold your hand forever. We want it to be more of like, let's empower you so that you can continue to work on your own. And I know we can talk about that more as to what our entire pipeline looks like.
Yeah, no, we'd be. That's why you've got such a wealth of information. When we come back from the break, I would like for you to talk a little bit about the differences in how men leaders think versus women leaders.
Ooh,
That's what I would like for you to just touch on when we come
yeah.
back. So we'll be back. We'll be back. More Money Talks with Attorney Coral, Dr. LACI Robbins in the studio this morning. More after the break. Okay, we are back with Money Talks with Attorney Coral, and I have with me in the studio this morning the lovely Dr. LACI Robbins.
You're so
Dr.
kind.
LACI, thank you again for being here.
It has been a pleasure. I have enjoyed the conversation. Thank you again for the invitation.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you were able to accept and I'm glad that you're here. So I just something of interest to me because you mentioned it earlier that you one of the things, one of the many things that you do is you study how leaders think. I have to paraphrase it in my own
Yeah.
terminology, but that's the gist of
Hmm.
what I heard you say. And I asked a question before we went to break that I would like for you to just address because I think it's fascinating. Um, how leaders think as women compared to men, because I know that has to impact what you do and how you do it. So I'm curious
Absolutely.
about that and would like for you to just take the mic and talk on that.
Sure. I actually wrote an entire white paper on the matter. So there are two different, and physiologically, we are different. We know that just from the exterior, right? But it also is the way our brains are made. So women tend to lead from more of a communal standpoint, meaning build community. Men tend to lead more from an agentic standpoint, meaning very direct, forthright. Some would even argue aggressive, right? And so the way we've been conditioned as women leaders is that you need to lead like a strong man, pull your britches up and be more forthright. And unfortunately, when that happens, then the woman finds herself in something called the double bind, where she's seen as either competent or likable, right? So competent, or meaning can she do the job, or likable, but rarely both. And she has to then know when is it appropriate for me to stand in which energy, right? But here's
Mm,
what the research says. The research says more effective leadership is communal, which is that of how women lead, right? Isn't that interesting?
that is
And so
interesting.
we have then a choice that, and this is one of the things that we train on, is how can you create a more inclusive style environment for the team that you lead? And how can you, as a leader, regardless of gender, create opportunities that allow for inclusive style leadership? So, what
Mhm.
does that look like exactly? Well, instead of me setting the agenda for the meeting, we have a one on one, you set the agenda and you facilitate the meeting, and I'm attending as your supervisor and just responding to those things that you may be presenting. And then I may then towards the end of the meeting, here are the items that I would like to address. And so
Mm,
rather than it always being this kind of top down model, it becomes
mhm.
a bubble up model.
Hmm.
And what tends to happen is those organizations who operate in that regard, they tend to have better retention because I feel like my voice is heard. I feel like I'm a valued employee now. I'm not just
Okay.
a number or a spoke in the cog in the
Okay.
wheel.
Okay.
Mhm.
Talk a little bit more about this double bind, with women leaderships, competent or likable. Can't you be both?
So you are both, and you definitely can be both. You simply have to know, contingent on what the circumstance might be, which, how do I need to show up? Right. And so sometimes, being overly competent, people confuse that and think, oh, they're cocky or they're very arrogant. But no, I'm just really good at what I do. And so, especially as Black women, we can be categorized as like, quote, the angry Black woman, or she's high and mighty, you need to knock her off, you need to knock her down off her horse, she needs to come down a couple of pegs. And so we as women have to use strategies where it's very much my idea, but now you, Attorney Coral, you're my ally. So there are four people every person needs in their life, and one is an ally. So when we go into the meeting, because we know every time we go into the meeting, the idea that I continue to present gets pimped. So there are a lot of Johns sitting around the
You
table.
said pimp.
Yes, get pimped,
Because there's some
right? Because
Johns
they're
sitting around
John
the
sitting
table.
around the table.
Yeah.
But we're going to now be in allyship together. So when you see that John trying to pimp my idea, we've already agreed in our meeting in the ladies' room that you're going to bring the attention back to me that it's my idea. And I'm going to
Oh,
do the same for you.
I love it.
And so you have to be strategic. I mean, just at the end of the day, see, one of the big mistakes that a lot of people make is they think it's not a game. And
Mm,
Lois Frankel, she's the author of Nice Women Don't Get the Corner Office. She is very clear that it's a game. And if you come with, because some people say, well, I'm just not going to play the game, I'm just not going to do it. You're still playing the game because you're choosing to sit on the sideline.
right.
And so the moment that you realize that, yes, in fact, it is a game, and that you need to know how to play the game, that's when you start to win the
There
game.
you go. Yeah. Yeah, because if you say you're not going to play the game, then by definition, you cannot win if you don't
You
play.
cannot win if you don't play. You
Right.
cannot win if you don't play. And, silence assumes consent. And so if I'm not playing the game, I'm just saying, well, I don't mind that you keep stealing my ideas. I don't mind that you keep taking credit for every time for the work that I've done. I'm just going to wait my turn, and perhaps one day you'll notice me and I'll get the promotion, instead of realizing you don't have to wait for the invitation to negotiate for that salary increase. You can go and make the appointment yourself. You don't have to wait for your annual review. At any
Right.
time, you can go in and say, I need to negotiate for more money, and here's why.
Right. So who are the other three people that you need? You got an ally. Who are the other three?
I feel like I need to come back and we talk about that.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
we
Probably don't have a whole lot of
we
time.
I'll
Yeah.
throw them to you real quick and we can talk
Mhm.
deeper for the next time. So, the very first person that every person needs is a mentor. A mentor essentially says, be like me. We often confuse a mentor with a coach and a consultant. A coach is your guide on the side, a consultant is your expert. I don't have to be an expert in the work that you do, but I need to be an expert in the concepts that you are aware of and are learning about. The second person is the ally. The third person is an advocate. This is the person who's speaking for you when you can't speak for yourself and you're not in the room. And the last person is a mentee, because it's not enough for you to strive and go up and leave the next person behind.
Oh my goodness. Well, you know what? If that doesn't cover it, I don't know what will. But no, you're right. There's a lot to that. So I asked the question, and we only have just a short time, because it sounds like we're nearing the end now. But Dr. Lacey, it's been such a pleasure having you today. We are going to continue next week with more from Dr. Lacey, and we're going to be able to go more in depth and talk about your other businesses that you're involved
Yeah.
in, and just get the wealth of information from you that you have. So thanks again for coming this week, Dr. Lacey. Say goodbye to the audience on the way out here, and we will be back again next week.
Yes, I look forward to coming back. If you want to learn more, you can visit robbinsnestconsulting.com. That's ROBBINS consulting.com. And I'll see you next week.
Sounds so good. We'll see you then. Thanks, everyone.